Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Tamara Leigh's Trend On with my co-host Brent Hamachek, who is visible, and I am not today. Hi,
Well,
Brent.
hello, Tamara, and we're going to start getting, when you post the show and people are doing live commenting, they're going to be saying, hey, why isn't Tamara the one we can actually see? And so right now, let's just preempt this. Look, folks, we didn't plan this. I apologize for I'm being the one that you can actually see in real life, and Tamara isn't. I promise you that soon we'll do a show where you can only see Tamara, and we'll put up a picture of like Winnie the Pooh or something for me. So apologies to anybody who's watching. Hi. You've lost control of the show again, Tamara.
I know. It happened so fast, but, we just go with it. So here we are. And the reason is I'm not in a place where in my usual, studio setup such that it is where I could be on camera. But I didn't want to miss today's show because it's so important to me and it's so timely. And I am super excited to have our guest with us, Sergeant Betsy Bantner, I think I said that right, Smith. And she is the host of the National Police Association Report podcast that you all need to watch and catch and go follow, and is doing great work. And she's a retired police sergeant out of Chicago. And with what we're seeing on both sides of the police issues, I just thought it's really important to talk about it. So welcome, Betsy. Thank you for joining us today. Should I call you Sergeant?
Hey, thank you. Call me Betsy, please.
Okay.
I'm very excited to be with you guys.
Great to have you.
I'm looking forward to it. So first of all, tell us your part of what you're doing and about the show, and then we'll get into tackling some of the issues that are, even within the last 24 hours news cycle are, all about what's going on with our law enforcement and police officers.
Yep. I'll tell you. So I've been involved in law enforcement since 1976. That kind of makes me old. I was a senior in high school. I started as a dispatcher. After college, I became a cop in a Chicago suburb. I was there for 29 years and just had an amazing adventure as a police officer. And I had a parallel career in training and writing, and then eventually media, which is part of what we do now. And I do it with my husband, Dave Smith. And so we got involved with the National Police Association about a year ago. And the National Police Association, a lot of people think it's a union or something. It's actually, it's a non-for-profit organization that helps citizens understand how they can help the police. And of course, it's incredibly important now. And so we put out videos and articles, and now we have a show that you can find on our YouTube channel, the National Police Association. And we have a website, nationalpolice.org. But we are also on Sunday mornings on the First TV streaming and on Pluto on cable. And we've just had some fantastic guests. I got to talk to Sheriff David Clark, and I'm going to talk to Mike Solon later this week from the Seattle Police Guild. And we've just had a couple of terrific constitutional sheriffs. And we're just going to share information with everybody. So check it out.
I did check it out. Oh, go ahead, Brent.
I was going to say your guest list is like what Tamara rounds up for us, you being a case in point. Tamara does all the talent booking. She knows everybody. And so I just kind of show up and say, what wonderful person are we going to talk to today? Let me ask you a really, really simple, really specific question to start things off. Describe the state of law enforcement in the United States today from your perspective. That's as easy as it gets, right?
Yeah, really, it's a great question.
Let's start big and work down. Your take on the state of law enforcement in America today.
Well, what we want people to understand, first of all, there's about 900,000 cops in the United States, and American policing is very decentralized. And I'm finding that people don't really know that. Most police departments in the United States are less than 10 officers. You know, we all think of LAPD, Chicago PD, New York, you know, NYPD. Most police departments are not those big organizations. So there are, in every state, controls its own law enforcement training, its own law enforcement standards. Each state is different. And that is the beauty of the American justice system, that we're not just one federal system, but each state handles its own. That's, you know, and that's, we all take an oath when we become a cop, when we put on that badge and gun. First and foremost, I will uphold the Constitution. So I want everybody to understand that that is central to what law enforcement does. Now, the state of law enforcement today, I'll be honest, in most areas, especially urban areas, cops are pretty demoralized right now. That we're still getting up and going to work and doing our thing, but it is, you know, nobody becomes a cop thinking everybody's going to love you. But especially in these urban areas, to go to work every day, every night, have frozen water bottles thrown at you and people spray paint your squad cars and all this stuff it's really difficult. And, you know, cops used to worry about if they get into a shooting, am I going to be okay? Am I going to be within policy? But now we worry about, am I going to get indicted? Am I going to go to prison? Am I going to lose my family? Is my family going to get attacked? There's so much of that going on. So yeah, big question. Lots of things to talk about there.
It's interesting to me. So out of college, I worked for the Treasury Department as a bank examiner. And I happened to start working at the very time that there was the big scandal in the East Coast with money laundering. And the head of the bank examiners went before Congress to testify, and they said, what happened? Did you not have the right resources? Did you not have the right laws? And he basically said, no, we had everything we needed. Our people just blew it. Well, you can imagine what the reaction was. So the examiners in the field, in that case, reacted by saying, oh, you saying we blew it and we weren't tough enough? And so they proceeded to launch on a campaign that lasted about 3 years of going after every bank and banker in the country as aggressively as they could. The difference was, as bank examiners, we couldn't get shot. So I've got to believe that when somebody sells out the police and says they're being too aggressive, too violent, they're being racist and discriminatory, instead of saying, okay, we'll show you, their reaction has to be, okay, well, I'm not going to let myself get shot. And they have to, it's like the opposite reaction, right? A natural one to step back. Is that sort of what we're starting to see in some cases?
Well, I mean, we've seen a natural progression over the last year, you know, really since 2014, since Ferguson, but especially in the last 6 months, you know, you're seeing crime. Crime was really down in the United States. You're seeing crime rise again, especially in those urban areas. Chicago, out of control. But cities like New York, New York was the safest big city under Rudy Giuliani. Now what we're seeing is shootings up over 50%. And, you know, we've seen the attacks on law enforcement. And yeah, it's a problem because cops are, you know, we're going to go out and do our jobs, but we might not be as aggressive. And understand that a lot of them, their chiefs and their mayors are telling them not to be as aggressive. And Portland's a perfect example. Why would you arrest people if no one's going to prosecute them? So, and I want folks to understand the system. Just because the police arrest you doesn't mean you're going to get charged with a crime. That's up to the prosecutor. So we see people arrested for, you know, trying to start the courthouse on fire in Portland, and the Portland Police Bureau, their guild building, you know, trying to burn it down, cops inside. And yet, if you don't have a prosecutor that is going to take that case to court, it's pointless for the police to risk their physical and mental selves to make those arrests.
Tamara?
So I feel like part of, as we look at this from that, it's the public trust, kind of the trust contract between the police and the public. And we need to, which is what I love about the show that you're doing and the work that you're doing, is you're actually reaching out and engaging the public and part of the conversation to rebuild that trust and to work together for safer communities. And the other side of that needs to be defending our Constitution. And what it's kind of like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, with particularly with mega PPT, right? Oh, there I am. Yeah, I apologize. My internet is non-existent here, so I'm trying to just go off data. So I apologize if that's interfering with the show today. But I feel like part of the problem is that you know very much over the last 3 years with the Flynn case, and we see
We're having a lot of trouble, Tamara.
corruption at the highest levels of our agencies, and then it's the swamp in our backyard that even our local courts and politics are very swampy, and so people tend to want to back the blue, but then again, the blue are the same ones who are arresting us for going to church or not wearing masks. So can you maybe speak to that paradox of corruption in law enforcement, and yet needing to have constitutional law enforcement?
Well, sure. Let me speak to the federal side and the whole, the Flynn case is beyond outrageous. The FBI's role in spying on the Trump campaign that we're finding more about every single hour almost these days. Very frustrating. And when my husband and I go around the country, train state, local, federal police officers. Nobody hates a dirty cop, as we call him, like James Comey or like Peter Strzok, more than good cops. And the boots on the ground FBI agents out there, it must be incredibly frustrating for them. And I know I've talked to a lot of them. It's affecting them because they're trying to go do these complicated cases. And they walk in, and when somebody hears the FBI, it used to command a lot of respect. Now, very often, now they hear the FBI, and everybody thinks of everybody thinks of James Comey and Peter Strzok. So that's incredibly frustrating. What we're seeing now in the Flynn case is this system. We have a judge that's really problematic, and that now in that piece of the justice system, the judiciary. Now we're seeing General Flynn used as quite a political football, and I don't think that's going to end until after the election. Now, on a more local level, when we were all shut down because of the coronavirus, we were horrified to see video of police officers shutting down worship and arresting moms for playing on the playground. That was a horrific use of law enforcement resources. And the problem is we were in just absolutely uncharted territory. We now know so much more than we did 6 months ago. And from a constitutional standpoint, I don't like police officers being involved in, are you wearing a mask? Are you social distancing? And I think that there are a lot of agencies, I would say most agencies, starting with sheriff's departments, are the ones who stood up around this country and said, we're not going to enforce your mask laws. And understand, most of these are not laws. These are
rules. So maybe for the audience, just explain the difference.
We're losing her again.
Yeah.
Let me ask the question for you, Tamara.
Yeah.
Explain to the audience the difference between enforcement of a directive issued under emergency power declarations and exercising versus something that's actually a criminal statute. What difference, if any, is there to that?
Well, so every state and every county has the ability to declare states of emergency, where you can. So for example, right now in Louisville, Kentucky, there's a curfew. You don't usually have a curfew for adults, but because of the riots, they have set a nightly curfew that'll probably go through the weekend. That's based on the state of emergency that was declared in Louisville. So with the coronavirus, what we saw were states, counties, cities declaring that state of emergency, asking people to, first of all, stay inside, secondly, not go to public areas like playgrounds and things. And so you had leadership, either in, certain states, counties, things like that, ordering the police to go out and enforce these laws. They had no other, way of enforcing those laws. Frustrating to watch, bad optics at a time when we are, we've got a great Back the Blue movement. Everybody sees my flag back there. But then to have those police officers enforcing those directives, those emergency directives, very, very frustrating. But again, I have to tell you, as a law enforcement officer for 29 years, I had to go out and do things I didn't like. It's not Betsy's police department on my badge. It was my city. Mm-hmm. And so officers were ordered, and we have to follow lawful orders by our leadership to go out and do certain things. So I would ask people, don't look at that individual cop. They're doing what they're told to do, what they're paid to do. Look at the leadership, the chief, the sheriff, the mayor, the governor, whatever it is. Cops get used. We get used as political footballs very often. And that's kind of what happened during the coronavirus. And just what we saw happen in that case in Ohio, where a mom is sitting kind of by herself in the stands. And what I'm told was the school resource officer came and ordered her to leave and ultimately arrested her for not wearing a mask.
Well, we're certainly in a time where people in non-law enforcement capacities have been given the opportunity, because of the various flu mandates, to become powerful, if but for a moment, right? And so whether it's the gate attendant at United Airlines, or whether it's the person who's the park patrol, whatever it might be, now all of a sudden they can speak with authority in telling people what to do things or what to do. And of course, then they can also turn to calling the police and saying, enforce this, right? And we've given people that chance to be powerful for a moment, and it's not good. I wanted to, one of the things that I believe for a long time is a very simple construct with regard to law enforcement. And that is that A, humans do really bad things to each other. So B, humans are required to have some method of control to stop them from doing that. And C, they pick police to do it, and police are also humans. So that means by its design, it is inherently imperfect. So we have human beings protecting us from other human beings because of how humans behave. What's happened of late seems to have stacked people up on the side of cops are good or cops are bad. I prefer to think that cops are human, which means they're good and bad. And they have jobs to do, and sometimes they do them very well, and sometimes they do them very poorly. How do we address, in such a dichotomous sort of society and moment, the idea that yes, real issues exist with some police, and yes, we have to support the police in protecting us, and we're in conflict just in that little statement? Tear that apart a bit, if you would.
Sure. So, and that's a big part of what the National Police Association is all about, is getting positive stories out there, helping people understand, because this is a complicated issue. Nobody, even when I'm driving around, I don't want to see the red lights go in my rear view mirror because I'm speeding. We're all like, oh no, am I going to get a ticket? But, we got to look at what the purpose of law enforcement is. And so when you look at the abolish the police movement, that's a childish fantasy. I would, everybody, if you haven't seen the movie Purge, take a look at it, because that's what's going to happen if we abolish the police. And the very people that need the police most are going to suffer. I live in an area where I have firearms, I can take care of myself. But for example, when you go to Chicago, where I'm from, where my youngest daughter still lives, owning a firearm is very difficult. Carrying a firearm is even more difficult. And there are so many people in Chicago, in a couple of neighborhoods that are run by the gangs. They can't protect themselves. And if the police go away, they're going to have nobody. And those are the people that are going to suffer, and this is why I hope everybody saw that Rasmussen poll that came out last week. 84% of the Black voters polled that Rasmussen talked to said, I don't want less police in my neighborhood. In fact, I want more police. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's a delicate balance. And are police human? Yes. And I think that's something that gets lost in the conversation. I've talked to a lot of media over the last few months, and they say, well, don't police need more training? Don't they need, we always could use more training. We could always use more funding. But ultimately, we're human. And when we go out there, when somebody shoots at us, that's frightening. We are afraid. Cops are not a video game. We're not a TV show. We are moms and dads and sons and daughters and brothers and sisters who are out there risking our lives to keep our communities safe.
Let me shift gears slightly a little, or not really shift them, but go back to this notion of the flu and the ordinances and the enforcement actions and everything else. Some people get a bit apoplectic if you mention the Holocaust for any reason other than the Holocaust. But those sensitive people aside, we established something coming out of World War II that is applicable in everyday life, maybe just to a lesser extent. And that's sort of the Nuremberg principles, right? And it's not okay to say you're just following orders. And while I'm not equating mask enforcement with the rounding up of Jews and putting them in train cars for extermination, I am wanting to ask you this idea for regular police being directed by whether it is their village council or their department head to go out and essentially treat regular, normal citizens like they're hardened criminals for sitting in an empty stand without a mask on. What is the calling of that individual officer with response to all this? When and where or how, or do they draw some sort of line? When do the police have to engage in civil disobedience, if you will?
Well, and that's a great question. And individual officers are going to have to make that decision. And there's a difference between following an order, the police following an order, and following a lawful order. If my police chief ordered me to go, gun down 50 puppies at the puppy store, I'm going to say no, that's not a lawful order. And this is individual.
Beautiful example, by the way. I love that came into your mind.
I'm all about the puppies.
No wonder we get along so well. Let's go right to the whole puppy murder thing and try to jump from there. So please keep jumping.
I'm all about the puppies.
You've horrified my audience.
But this is the thing, individual police officers, and we saw this during the, you didn't really see it in the media, but we saw this anecdotally in talking to, our students around the country, our police students, and where they said, yeah, we went to management and said, we're not doing this anymore. And so there's been a big, there's been a very positive trickle down where, again, we've seen, these, and again, it starts with sheriffs, because sheriffs they tend to be more in line with the true meaning of the Constitution. sheriffs where they stood up and said, we're not doing it. My sheriff here in Pima County, Arizona, or, early on said, we're not going to, I'm not going to make people wear masks if they're not wearing them. That's up to the health department. But for example, that case in Ohio, I don't know if that was a real police officer. I don't know if it was a security guard, and I would tell people we have, there's something that we like to talk about called comply now, complain later. So that woman in the stands, she needs to raise holy hell about what happened there. But again, I think I would have told her, maybe the best way is to document what's happening, video your conversation, and leave, and then call everyone, the superintendent, the chief of police, if it's a police department, the media. Comply now, complain later. Now, on the other hand, was it appropriate to taser her? I have not seen what led up to the tasering other than, that 10 seconds of conversation. And so I would err on the side of caution there in judging what occurred. But it's, again, we got to look at leadership. Why is this happening? Why is the superintendent allowing it? Why is the police chief or superintendent or director or whoever is running that agency? Why are they allowing it? People need to raise hell.
Well, and that's to my point of there's an imbalance of power when you have an exchange like that between the citizen and the law enforcement, which is actually, it seems, in contradiction to what the Constitution intended, that the individual was the supreme authority over the government. But that's not in practicality how it works out when
the problem is
encounter with the law enforcement agency where the citizens' rights. Yeah, go ahead.
So here, we could take that argument and apply it to the Black Lives Matter writers who say, well, yeah, we get to loot the Magnificent Mile because reparations. So we're not going to listen to the police, and because I feel that this is my right. So again, we've got to, does the citizen have ultimate authority over the individual law enforcement officer? I would say no, because it's the citizenry who's paying us to enforce the laws. So again, that officer, security guard, SRO, whatever he was in Ohio, what I would have done and what I would hope most officers would do is when she refuses to comply with the mask, you take a step back because she's not dangerous. You call for a supervisor and you pass it on up the chain of command. That's what should have happened.
Yeah. Well, and that's my thing too of what. Oh.
Go ahead, Tamara. I've only been talking so much because you've had technical trouble, so I've been trying.
I know. No, I appreciate that. I'm just saying that it seems in most cases where the LEO should be the professional to de-escalate the situation. So I like your approach there, what you just said, to step back, diffuse it rather than antagonize it.
Correct.
Yeah.
So if I could, I think one of the things.
So go ahead, Brent. I'll mute me again.
Sorry, Tamara, we lost you again. I thought, sorry, I'm not, for the audience again, I'm not trying to interrupt Tamara.
No, you didn't. Just trying to go ahead.
Mitigate the technical issue. I think one of the things that probably is of most interest or great interest to people who watch law enforcement conflicts with citizens and hear about them, but who have never been in any kind of law enforcement role, is this thing that we'll call the sort of the Jacob Blake phenomenon. So here we have a situation in Kenosha where this fella runs from the cop, basically scurries around the car where there's children inside, reaches inside, there's a weapon, and then the police officer from behind him shoots him in the back. So, and we all know that, America's favorite bigot, LeBron James, made a big deal out of this, and it's racism. He is a bigot, by the way. I can't stand this man, but I'll try to set that aside. but to the typical person, they can look at that situation, or let's go all the way back to my favorite musical artist, Bruce Springsteen, and his great song 41 Shots, about the Haitian person who was shot by the New York cops decades ago outside in the foyer of his apartment building 41 times. And people say, sort of, I'm going to ask the question this way, why couldn't they have just shot Jacob in the back twice? Why did he have to shoot him 7 times? Tell people who have never been there what it is like, what's happening in that moment that people need to try to understand, so that they're not just counting bullets, they're really taking into account the psychology in the moment of what's happening.
Well, first of all, Jacob Blake, let's look at that. He was shot 7 times. Is Jacob Blake dead? No, he's not.
Right.
So, on TV, when a police officer shoots someone, the officer shoots him 1 time, the guy falls down very dramatically, and the situation is over. In reality, people who have been mortally wounded, people who have been shot by police and are dying, have still been able to return fire and kill law enforcement officers. There is case after case after case, going way back to the Miami shooting of multiple FBI agents decades ago. So we train to fire multiple times. The Supreme Court several times has ruled in use of force cases that the amount of rounds a law enforcement officer fires has nothing to do with excessive use of force. So in the Jacob Blake case, for example, the police are called not to break up a fight between 2 women. We now know the police were called because the guy who had previously raped his ex-girlfriend was back harassing her and threatening to steal her car with their children in it. Mm-hmm. There's already a restraining order against it. Remember, we used to be really concerned about domestic violence and about women being sexually assaulted. Now, not so much, apparently. The media isn't. I wish Me Too would weigh in on this. But so the Kenosha police go, they engage Jacob Blake. They, on the way there, they find out that there's an active felony warrant for sexual assault. He's violating that restraining order. They ask him to comply with being arrested. He does not. He puts 1 cop into a chokehold. Remember, we're all upset about chokeholds. But now he's got a cop in a chokehold. Other cops are trying to fight with him. He's threatening them. You hear them yell, "Drop the knife, drop the knife, drop the knife." So obviously he has a knife. We still don't have all the, we still don't have all the information from Wisconsin DCI, by the way. That's another issue.
Right, which, by the way, quick interruption. This disturbs me to no end, and it is a pattern that police departments around the country, when something like this happens, by the way, the Breonna Taylor case is another great example, come out and what happened almost right away. And they don't tell people the facts, and they allow the media and the LeBron James of the world to construct a false narrative, to start the riot. And once you start the riot, it doesn't do any good a month later to say, well, here's what really happened. Riot's already started. It's like catching a truck rolling downhill. Good luck. Get out in front and tell people right away, not necessarily to stop the riots completely because people just want to riot, but at least to slow down the media's ability to construct a false narrative when confronted with facts. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but please continue.
No, that's okay. And I let me address that, because in the last few days, I have been talking to multiple national media outlets, and one particular cable outlet, I spoke to someone, and that person had no idea what really happened in the Breonna Taylor case. I mean, last night I was on with the BBC, and the moderators, I talked about some of the Breonna Taylor situation, some statistics, and the guy says, that's just not true. And I'm like, well, it is just true. The media doesn't want to know the truth, because and you can see this on Twitter. Tamara, you see this constantly, where on Twitter, when you answer somebody's tweet and say, Breonna Taylor wasn't asleep in her bed when she was shot, people jump on there. You're a liar. You're a racist for not saying that. The facts are out there. But people just don't seem to have the stomach to want to learn them. It's better to say the police broke in and shot Breonna Taylor in her bed because she was Black. And I don't understand them. I find the media to be extremely irresponsible in these cases. And again, they were in the Jacob Blake case, where it was just racist cop shoots guy in the back, 7 times.
Right.
And, this is just, but see, we live in a soundbite world.
We do.
So, if you can learn, if they can just put it out there, police are racist. Well, now, we're going to, look at what we did. We burned down Kenosha.
We really do.
Burned down Louisville. We're burned down Portland.
So speaking of sound bites, as Tamara's been talking to us in sound bites, Tamara, do you want to try to wrap up our show and ask Betsy how people can find her and all those wonderful things you do? You want to give it a shot?
Yes, I would like to try that real quick. And so we'll have to have you back on when I'm in a little better technology thing. I'd love to do that because this is really important dialogue, which is what I love about your show. And we are the new media. The fake news has an agenda that they, exploit. Brent's case made very well on that. And so we can change the narrative. I live in a Mayberry town. I want my police really bored. I want them just checking the store shops at night to make sure they're locked. We can have that positive community interaction with our police community, but there are serious issues that need to be addressed, and I love that you're doing just that. So tell our audience again, and then I'll get out of this echo chamber.
I would ask people, go to nationalpolice.org, find us, follow us on Twitter. We have a terrific Facebook page, and look for our show, the MPA Report, on the first on streaming, which is Bill O'Reilly's streaming network, Pluto TV on cable, and of course on our YouTube channel. And I would ask everyone, the next time, when you go out today or next week or whatever, and you see your local cop, wave to them. If you see them in the store, thank them for what they do. Smile at them. American law enforcement, we're there for our citizens, but we sure need our citizens to be there for us.
Well, we certainly do that here in our household, and we'll continue to spread the word. Betsy, thanks. It was a pleasure to meet you. Great to have you as a guest. Tamara, it was good to have you as a guest.
I'll be back next time.
Tamara will be back next time for real. Thanks everyone for joining us, and Betsy, best of luck in what you're doing. It's terrific. It's good work, and we'll follow you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again on Tamara.
There she goes.